Welcome to this episode of the Comedy Defect Podcast. My name is Winter Phonander, I'm a comedian, and this is my show. So welcome to the show, guys. This is episode 46 with a very funny, quite controversial, a bit of a provocateur, Mr. Jay Islaam. Talked to Jay for over an hour and a half. Jay talks about his pet peeves about podcasters and things you shouldn't do, and we had a laugh because some of the things he was talking about, I do them. So we had a bit of a laugh about that. It was really a lot of fun. Jay is a very smart, business-minded individual when it comes to comedy. It was great to pick his brains about certain things. This is one of my favourite episodes, guys. I really enjoyed recording this and editing it back. It was a lot of fun. You can go find Jay on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all those places. He's also taking a show up to the Edinburgh Fringe in 2018, which is called Islamophobic Muslim. So he's going to want you to come to his shows, his previews, to come see him live to work some stuff out. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at The Comedy Defect. You can follow me at Winter Phonander. You can also come see my live stand-up gig dates, which are from my Edinburgh preview shows, which will be on my website, winterphonander.com. I'm also taking as many jokes as I can out of that Guinness Encyclopedia and putting them up on Twitter under the title The Book Dad Read, and the handle for that is at Guinness Jokes. Now, as I said to you before on the last episode, this podcast will be released monthly now because I just do not have the time. I'm so busy at the moment, I do not have the time to release it weekly anymore, so I need to focus on the other things that have come in. So at the moment, it's going to be reduced to monthly, maybe twice a month, but at the moment it's going to be once a month, so I can get on with the stuff that I've got to do. I hope you're enjoying it, guys. I'm really enjoying it too, but at the moment, I've just got too much work on. Long may it last. You can also support this podcast by going to Patreon, typing in The Comedy Defect Podcast, and can donate as little as £1 or as much as you feel this podcast is worth. And those of you that do donate, thank you, because you're paying for the people that can't. And those of you that can't donate, just share your favourite episode, tell your friends about it, it tells people where we are and what we're doing. This is one of my favourite episodes, guys, with a very controversial, bit of a provocateur, Mr. Jay Islaam, for episode 46. Enjoy. Jay Islaam, welcome to the Comedy Defect. Thank you for having me in your studio. This is amazing. I'm loving it. And this is, as I said before, is going to kick the rest of my episodes asses for sound. It's going to be like, oh my God. Oh, well, I really like that episode with Jay Islaam. Yeah, because it was in his studio. I mean, I usually do it in a shed or a car or whatever it is. But thank you for having me at your place. I feel like I've been taken out of my safe zone and into it's your podcast now, it feels like, So how are you, man? Sorry, I'm talking like, how are you getting on, man? Right?
I'm well. Welcome to Peterborough Radio.
Oh, great.
It's good to be in a studio
That's
because the soundproofing is so awesome that you won't get any echo here, which is the bane of your life if you're doing podcasts. The echo, the sound quality is always a problem. So I thought I'd invite you in here, where hopefully the sound will be top-notch. We say that now, you'll get comments, people saying, no, it wasn't very good at all. Yeah.
We've tempted fate now. I say this is lovely. How long have you been here? How long have you been doing radio?
I've been doing this for more than a year here at this particular station. So I started earlier in beginning of 2016, actually. Right, yeah, great. I've been doing the Comedy Canon radio show, which I do Peterborough Radio and on Switch Radio in Birmingham. And of course, separately, there's the Comedy Canon podcast, which is the no holds barred, no censorship. Yeah. You can swear as much as you like version of my interviews. But obviously the ones that I do on the radio, you've got to stick to Ofcom rules. And you've got to make sure that you temper your language.
You've been doing this since 2016, right? You're basically your three shows. Your one show that you're editing, the easy bit version, which you released to the internet, and the really annoying version you have to stick to the rules of Ofcom, right?
Yes.
And what has been the most tense and difficult moment of... Don't have to name, but there's been situations, I'm sure, when you've had to kind of go, oh man, what is the worst interview you've ever done so far?
Okay, not naming any names.
I love it. Right. There's going to be serious people like kind of go, oh, what exactly, what number? Was it like over 100 or is it below 50 or what is it? Where exactly is it?
Well, I'm only up to episode about 75, 80 at the moment on the Comedy Canon. Let's firstly say the vast majority of the interviews have been fantastic. The interviewees have been fantastic. However, the tough interviews are always the people who have nothing to say. They're the really difficult ones. The people who either have nothing to say because they don't have enough experience or don't have any interesting stories to tell, or, on the other hand, are shy and nervous and don't want to say much because they're afraid that what they say may end up making them look bad. Mm-hmm. So they hold back too much. And I think most of the interviewees, they understand that it's just a chat. Yeah. But the ones who get very nervous don't make for good interviewees because they're worried, and so they're not ready to let go and give their full opinion.
You've been doing comedy now for how long?
Oh, coming up to 4 years later in the year. Yeah, so not as long as people usually think.
That's it. Been doing comedy long enough that you've got your own stalker.
2.
You've got 2 stalkers now. Have they?
No, actually, no. I have gone back down to 1 because, great news, one of my stalkers recently contacted me, apologised, and said, I'm really sorry if I've caused you any grief, any problems, and I would like to just say that I no longer want to beat you up. Which is nice. He actually took time out to contact me and say, I would not like any more bad blood between us, and so thank you very much. But yeah, I do have another stalker.
Oh, wow.
Who turns up at a lot of gigs to ruin them.
Yeah. Was that the one that I saw at that gig in Tipton area, was it?
This was a gig in Birmingham, Danny Beats gig.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
He was the one who turned up, yes. So he's still my stalker. However, the other stalker has given up the ghost now and realised the error of his ways.
You've broken up now. It's been put to bed, that's it. But, you still have this other guy, and, he turns up at every gig, right?
The problem is that I've had a website for me, in terms of comedy, before I started performing comedy, okay? And this is something that I did that most people don't do. Because I was always very digitally savvy. Digital marketing is what I do for a living. So I have a website, and that has been there for more than 5 years, I think. And my diary is on the website. So anybody who wants to stalk me, it's incredibly easy because it's public. It's public knowledge where I will be on certain dates. And so he picks the ones that are convenient for him.
He doesn't put the effort in. That's it. You think that a stalker would be committed. He'd be there waiting for you outside of work. But no, he's he's a lazy stalker.
Going through your bins, tapping your phone, that kind of stuff. No.
He just doesn't put enough effort into this relationship, So you started about 4 years ago, right?
Less than.
And you have been doing loads of characters as well, haven't it? How many characters have you got now?
Well, here's the thing. The character that everybody knows is Bam Bam Shake.
Of course.
This is the character that was the first thing I ever wrote when I started to do comedy about 3 and a bit years ago. He's proved ludicrously popular with audiences. And so he's the one that's come to dominate things. Not my favourite character, because I think I've developed far more as a comedian than he can offer. He's a very two-dimensional character, even one-dimensional, I would say, very much a one-note character. He's a horrible, misogynist, racist, evil person. But unaware. It's totally no self-awareness whatsoever. But I have done a few others. I did the Indian rabbi, who is a big fan of gangster movies and models his life and his speech on The Godfather. There are a few others. There's the world's only freelance homosexual ninja. He was fun to do.
Yeah.
And I've done him in different ways, either with an accent and without an accent. So when I'm doing him with an accent, it's usually a Yorkshire accent. And then there is...
That's the homosexual ninja.
That's the world's only freelance homosexual ninja.
Freelance as well. I like the freelance bit too. It's he just works for himself, it does a bit of ninjaing on the side and that's it. That's great. Yeah.
And then there's a South African policeman guy who is a big fan of apartheid and was devastated when apartheid ended, so he moved to the UK and he has become a UKIP politician, and that's his shtick. So there's lots of different ones that I've done, but what people don't often appreciate is that the vast majority of the time I'm being me. I'm just doing standard observational comedy, typical stand-up that you'd expect, usually with a political or satirical bent, and that's what I do a lot of the time when I'm on stage. But what's memorable is Bam Bam, and that's what people remember.
Not really pushing the boundaries at all, just just taking it, comedy by numbers. You're not trying to get anyone's back up in any way. I like that. That's just going through, just doing jokes. I like that. That's good. So,
that's me through and through.
And your favourite one is what?
My favourite is when I'm performing as myself. The reason I did characters, and the reason a lot of comedians who do characters do that, is because when you start, you're nervous, you're full of fear, and you're worried about how the audience will think of you, how they would react to you, will they heckle you, all that kind of stuff. And having a character is a shield. It's literally a shield that your cowardice puts out there and goes... if they hate me, they hate the character.
Exactly.
It's not me. It's not personal. It's not me they really don't dislike and absolutely despise. It's the character they have a problem with. As you get braver, you want to cast off the characters. However, you can end up in the situation, and quite a few comedians end up in the situation where the character's more adored than you, and you end up despising your own creation. And I have reached that point many times, but at the same time, it's arrogant to say, no, I will not do this anymore. It's beneath me. Because the audience like it. And what you're essentially doing in that situation is say, I know better than my audience, and you don't. You cannot be that arrogant. The audience know what they think is funny. Yeah. If that's what they want, that's what you should be giving them. Yes, you've got to satisfy your own creativity by doing the stuff that you want to do, but at the same time, don't give that up. And of course, a lot of the time when I get booked by promoters, they tell me, you are doing X. They don't even ask. They tell me, you are going to be doing X when you come perform my gig. And at that point, you're getting paid. You have to do what they want you to do.
You put yourself in that box, like, no, but I just want to be me. And it's like, I remember doing like a few years ago when I started in Ireland, and I did like a few characters and that, like, oh, I'm going to write these characters. I had a Scottish character, easy enough to do, mess about with, and like what you think it is, and then you're like, you look back, it's terrible. And then you're like, I had a French guy, again, these stereotypical, I had about 3 or 4 characters, right? And then I thought, for the grand finale, I'll show them me. Oh, they liked the other guys. They fucking hated me. And I was like, great. And I thought, this is the big reveal. They're going to love me. No, not at all.
I do have another character, actually, that I haven't mentioned, which is the French guy. You've done a French guy. Yeah. I did a French guy, too. Mm-mm. And it's very easy to do. The French guy that I did, he's called Michel de Fromage. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, French, if you're outside of France, is a very sexy accent, right? Automatically sexy.
Wait.
In France, not so much. Right, yeah, wait. In France, not so much, because, hey, everyone talks like that. But I thought, how can I make this funny? Wouldn't it be funny if he was a nerd, like a sci-fi nut or something like that, a horrendous, unlikable person? And if I put that in a French accent, will he still be sexy? And that was an experiment I wanted to try. And it was a really interesting experiment to do. Didn't really last too long, that character. I don't really do him anymore. But you discard stuff. You discard stuff all the time. And then what happens is you might write a joke and you'll do it as one character and it will bomb. And then you'll go, okay, that's not going to work. But you try a different character, and it works perfectly, suddenly. Some of the more horrendous stuff, for example, Bam Bam could get away with. Some of the even more horrendous stuff, the South African policeman could get away with, because everybody already assumes he's a terrible person. And so you can mix and match, and it's nice to play with that. It's nice to have that freedom to go, okay, that joke didn't work here, but I can move it along to this one.
You must have hit some really horrendous moments with these characters. They're Marmite, right?
Yes.
You either love them or they are appalled.
Not as Marmite as you might think. Certainly with Bam Bam, he can perform pretty much anywhere in the country and be enjoyed and will be liked. There are occasional audiences, either they're very politically correct, and that's often in the southeast, not in the rest of the country, or they're very, very middle class. The worst, well, there have been quite a few, actually. There have been quite a few deaths. But then when you've done 700-800 gigs, you're going to have quite a few deaths in there, peppered throughout. This happened to me just recently, about a week and a bit ago, where I did Bam Bam in Sheffield. And for the first 2 minutes, they were absolutely horrified. They did not go with it. Because I have this litmus test joke right at the start. And it's a very clever joke. And when I do it, if they go with it, I know this is going to be a good gig. And if they don't, I have to rethink. And I did this joke, and they didn't go with it. And I just thought, oh, God, they're thick as shit. If you don't get the clever joke, then chances are you're not very bright as an audience. I did it, and it didn't work. I thought, okay, this is going to be a struggle. But somehow, after a couple of minutes, they were absolutely bang on with it, and they loved it. And it was great at the end, where they were totally with it, and they were up for it, and they were shouting stuff out. And, of course, he's the kind of character who's big enough to take the heckles and throw stuff back at them. And the worse he gets, they love him. Sometimes it can work really well. Most of the time it will be quite all right. And then occasionally it won't work.
When did you decide you wanted to do comedy then?
Oh, as a teenager?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Long, long time ago. We're going back, I don't know, almost 20 years or so.
Wow.
I really wanted to be Bill Hicks. But
Who doesn't, though?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't, that's it.
Weirdly, now I watch him back, because he's on Netflix. A lot of his stuff is on Netflix now, a lot of his specials. And it's not as good as you remember. It's so disappointing. But then, of course, I guess the world has changed, our comedy tastes have changed. There's still a part of me that is mimicking bits of him. Not in terms of content, but in terms of style and the bravery, the willingness to push those boundaries. But of course, you've got to have a gag straight after to bring them back and go, no, it's still comedy. It's all right, it's still comedy. You're still in a safe space, it's fine. And then I worked at a comedy club, Glee, in Birmingham for a couple of years. Really, really enjoyed that. And of course, the beauty of that is that I went to stand at the back of the room every gig to watch the world's best comedians come and perform. All the big names came and performed, We had Sean Locke, who I saw die horrendously.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. We had Dara O'Brien and Ross Noble and McIntyre and Ed Byrne and all these guys that you see on TV now. Of course, they came through. Andrew Maxwell was fantastic, phenomenal. What's interesting was, back in those days, the biggest name on the bill, because it was still the same kind of 3 comedians and MC, The biggest, most experienced name on the bill seemed to be the MC. The headliner was, of course, accomplished and very good, but the MC was usually the guy who most impressed me. And I believe they used to pay the MC more as well, above the headliner. Right. And so things have changed now slightly. Yeah. MCs aren't given the same kudos they used to be. They're looking
at the host, aren't they? Just like, yes, you're just the guy. Oh, you should try this as well. It's like, oh, fuck off, isn't it? You know, that's it, for sure. So so how long did you work there for?
Oh, a couple of years.
Oh, right,
that was it. And then I kind of moved into the corporate world and enjoyed some successes there, which meant I kept getting promoted again and again and again and again. Comedy and all those creative dreams took a backseat, but I never forgot those dreams. I always wanted to do creative things. Yeah. Then about 4 years ago, I started thinking seriously, you need to give this a chance. You're going to be too old, and you don't want to be one of those 50, 60-somethings trying to have a late midlife crisis doing comedy and probably not succeeding, because you need a run-up of about 4 or 5 years to really start motoring, to get on to understand the industry, to understand the craft. I think most people need about 4 or 5 years before they become reasonably good.
Definitely. What was the moment in that job that you kind of went, oh no, I literally cannot do another Excel document in this job. I just need to drop keyboard, a mouse, I'm out, and like smash it. Was there a falling down moment at your job, or did you just go no, or just not turn up?
No, there was no moment like that, because I still do that stuff. I still like the Excel
spreadsheet.
I still like the Excel spreadsheet. I'm very good with the Excel spreadsheet.
Admin.
No, I'm very good at the admin. I have legal training. I have accountancy training.
Okay.
I've got marketing training like you wouldn't believe. I've got a huge amount of experience in those areas. So I wouldn't be doing those things if I didn't enjoy them. This is the thing. I really did love doing those things. And I'm competent, I think, and in the world of work, competence makes you a superstar. The kind of person who gets things done. And for me, there's something very satisfying about hitting those targets, about reaching those goals that you're set. Okay. For me, it's really enjoyable. But at the same time, you can be a little bit creative in it, but not as creative as you want to be.
So what's the plan then? You're seriously business-minded.
Yes.
So what is your plan to get by in this fucking gauntlet of comedy?
I don't know. I think I come to comedy in a very different way to almost all comedians. In that comedy was never going to be my whole life. I already have a wonderful life that I quite enjoy. So I never wanted to be like a circuit comedian. I wasn't interested in that life because I've done the travelling. I've done the all over the world, living in hotels, away from your family. Sick of it. Do not want to do that. And so the idea of being on the circuit never appealed to me. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do stand-up. I could do comedy like those heroes that I really liked in my teenage years. My current immediate plan is I'm going to be going to Edinburgh next year, so 2018. I'm going to do some previews of a new work-in-progress show that I'm working on right now. It's called Islamophobic Muslim. That's the working title. It may change, but I think that as a title, that's got some marketing, let's say, appeal. I'm pretty sure people will come and see a show called Islamophobic Muslim.
Big fat hook, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big fat hook. And
the one you did last year, wasn't it? That Fringe show.
Travels with Autism.
Travels with Autism, right?
Yes.
You have autism?
Yes.
Right. Because you do so many on-the-edge things that I think people just start to think, look, this guy, he's just doing this for the big, fat, juicy hook, just so he can get people into the thing. I mean, because that's what I'm sure people have said to you, isn't it?
Of course it is.
And like that is, I know I'm not trying to rile you with that question, or that statement, because you're doing all these characters, which are so not PC in any way, but really are, they're master talking points. It's going to get you a lot of press, and you're a digital marketer as well. So you could see that, I guess, that cynicism could really be, people conceived as being overly cynical.
That's fine. I'm a trained journalist.
Yeah.
I was taught how to write headline to grab people's attention. And people often go, some people don't like what you're doing. That's fine. They are not the target audience, particularly if they're comedians. Oh, so-and-so comedian doesn't like what you're doing. So-and-so, I don't care. You are not my target audience, okay? My target audience is the public. They are the people I'm trying to appeal to. I think far too many comedians do this where they think the comedy industry is their target market. It's not. The comedy industry is not your target market. Your target market are the punters out there. Those are the people you want to appeal to. And it doesn't matter if the whole of the comedy industry thinks you're a dick, as long as the public are interested and they buy tickets. And that's all that matters. I mean, I've worked in comedy clubs, and I know comedy promoters very, very well. I've been one myself at various points. Here's the truth that people don't want to hear. As far as a comedy promoter is concerned, they don't care if you're despised by your peers. They don't care if you're a joke thief. They don't care if you're a hack doing stolen jokes or even your own jokes from 30 years ago. They do not give a shit. All they care about is, does my audience enjoy what you've done? Will they come back because they enjoyed it? That's all that matters as far as the comedy promoters are concerned, because this is a business. Okay, these comedy promoters, these comedy clubs, they've built up a fan base for themselves. They're very protective of that. And all that matters is, do the audience like you? Now, I'm not saying go out and be a shit. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, as far as the comedy industry, as the people who book you and the people who own venues are concerned, they don't care if you're complete shit. And obviously they don't care because so many very successful and popular people in showbiz are complete shits. They don't care as long as you bring the punters in. That's all that matters to them. I think a lot of people, particularly when they're new, either don't realise that or forget that. What matters is what the public think of you. Don't worry about what your peers think of you. Your peers aren't going to put money in your pocket. But in terms of the clickbait thing that I do, why not? If you could, you would. If you were as good at this at me, if you were as good at this as I am, you would do it.
Is there a book you're going to release regarding digital marketing? Is there something? Because that sounds like you could also make a bit of money from that.
I do. I don't have a book. I do consult. I do sell my services as a digital marketing specialist to lots and lots of different businesses, including some comedy clubs and some comedy promoters, other comedians, people who are doing other businesses who are connected to the comedy industry that heard about me and gone, oh, well, he actually knows what he's doing in terms of getting a big reach for a product or a service. Or they hear that I sold out a lot of tickets in my last Edinburgh run and without doing any flyering, without doing any posters, and still people came. So somehow I've got the ability to attract an audience through digital marketing, through viral marketing. And so I get a lot of business now out of that. Great, yeah.
You're just sidestepping the circuit altogether. That's why you look so rested, Jay, isn't it? That's it.
Generally, I'm a really relaxed person. And I'm really looking forward to this next phase, this next show. And the reason I'm doing this particular show, Islamophobic Muslim, is that I've got some gay friends who I like as people. And what's interesting is that they describe themselves as homophobic homosexuals. And I was really intrigued by that. You're a homophobic homosexual? What do you mean? And I went, well, it's because we like the cock, but we don't like the people attached to them usually. I was like, oh, so we don't belong in that community. We don't feel like we belong in that community. But we are part of that community. We can't escape that fact. But we don't want to in many ways. We don't enjoy the culture and we don't fit in. I thought, you know what, that sums me up to a T when it comes to the Muslim community. I don't really feel like I belong in that community. I don't really enjoy the culture of that community, but I can't escape it either. And so this show will be about that. And it probably will be reasonably controversial in that I am willing to criticise and make fun of the Muslim community. Now, you're from Ireland. There probably was a time, and I'm sure there was a time, when you could never do that for the Catholic Church, could you? You couldn't do that because they were all powerful. I mean, we're going back 50, 60, 70 years, let's say. But things changed. When people like Dave Allen came along, when people like Father Ted just ripped into the Catholic Church, right?
That's true.
And eventually, their power waned, and you could make comedy about it quite comfortably. Right. But for those pioneers, those people first doing it, there were uncomfortable moments, and I'm sure they were vilified. I kind of see myself doing something similar, because I see the Muslim community as full of hypocrisy, full of lies, full of very unpalatable views, which aren't necessarily Islamic, but are ripe for satire, are ripe for poking fun at.
That's it.
And the issue, of course, now in the current climate is that because the far right have decided that they want to criticise Islam, not because they actually have a problem with Islam, they just have a problem with black and brown people, but they can't be overtly racist. So they can't just go out and say, oh, I hate Africans, and I hate these immigrants from Asia. Because they'll get done. It's hate crime. They'll get done by the police, they'll get taken to court. So they found a workaround, which is, well, we'll have a go at Islam because most Muslims are brown or black. So it's convenient. Because the far right are doing that, polite society, which I think will be 90% of our society, are uncomfortable now with anything that might even remotely be seen as critical of Islam or Muslims, because they don't want to be associated with the far right. But criticising Islam, criticising Muslims, is a signal that you're far right, essentially. Or at least that's how it's seen, that's how it's perceived. And so most people don't want to be perceived that way, because we are not, a far-right country at all. We are not a far-right society. The far-right haven't done particularly well electorally at any point, really. I mean, the high point was when Nick Griffin got into the European Parliament, but since then, nothing much has happened. I know people will be uncomfortable with this, but it's my job to preach and be funny. Now, whether I'm able to do that successfully, I don't know, but I suspect a lot of people will come to see the show.
I say you're saying there's parallels between the Catholic and the Muslim community, because when I first moved over to Wolverhampton, that's exactly how it was. I was like, you guys don't get let out as well. You don't leave the house until you're 18, then you go to college and you go mental. Something bad happens, and then they cover it all up, and then you get married off, and that's what happens. And that's what it was like back in the day. In Ireland, it was just slowly coming out of that, of course. And that sort of cultural village that you have surrounding you, it's just a massive community that just snitches on each other all the time.
Oh yeah.
As you say, with the Father Ted stuff, blew the stuff wide open, and it was so we could poke fun at it. It was great. But with your show, is
Islamophobic Muslim.
That is a perfect time to write a sitcom to do with that, or on the back of that idea, because then it was just like, oh well, I've done this thing, and this is the because it'd highlight everything and the stuff that people don't know about that religion, and it would just go, look, this is what actually happens.
This is the tough part, because there are very few frames of reference that are common between me and the audience, particularly a mainstream audience. If I speak to a Muslim audience, they will understand what I'm talking about when I refer to certain hypocrisies within the community. So the tough part will be communicating what those aspects are before poking fun at them, because you've got to make them understand where I'm coming from, why I'm making fun of certain aspects of the community. So I would love it if we could have an equivalent of Father Ted for the Muslim community.
Brilliant.
I think it would be fantastic if we could get to that point. I think we will eventually get to that point. That point is coming. I know that, what's that show? Citizen Khan has done a kind of similar thing.
Right.
Where I think it's Chris Marshall who plays the imam at the mosque. And of course he's a white guy, he's a convert. And the racism in the community against him because he's white.
Brilliant.
And people are like, you shouldn't put that out there. But the reality is that does exist. Yeah. There is a huge amount of racism towards white people within the Muslim community. Huge amount of racism against Africans, for example. It's not as bad now that we're several generations in. The racism that does exist is still from the first generation and the older generation, who have less connection to wider society. And so they live in an insular world, only speaking whatever language, Urdu or Punjabi or Arabic or, something like that. But younger generation, they're kind of getting it more. And also the education in actual Islam is better, where it's overtly anti-racist as a religion. There is no such concept as racial superiority. It's actually one of the most important aspects of Islam, that your value as a person is about nothing but how you are as a person, who you are towards other people. The younger generation understand that, but of course they still inherit a racist mindset from their parents. They do. And a belief in their own cultural, religious superiority, racial superiority, that still exists. And I think that's worth bringing out and poking fun at, because when you bring it out and poke fun at it, the impact of it lessens over time. It becomes irrelevant at a certain point.
There's so much more stuff to play with after that, because the amount of heat you're going to get from that show, it's going to be great.
Yes, that'll be interesting. I do get plenty of hate mail. I'm looking forward to...
Sorry, heat. More. I didn't say... Well, heat or hate, both.
I think that if I make it funny enough, the heat won't matter. It won't matter at all, because if people come wanting to hate it and I'm funny, I win. If people come wanting to love it, and they do, I win. If people come just out of curiosity and it's great, I win. Yeah. It's all down to me to make it a success. I'm well aware of that, and the pressure is on.
So you started your podcast in 2016, right?
Yes.
And you were talking earlier about, like, what was... You have a pet peeve about podcasts. What is that? You said philosophy about podcasts, you said.
I think most comedians make terrible podcasters. I genuinely do. And I have real bugbears. And the reason I started my podcast was that I was seeing so many people do it so badly, horrendously badly, and then going, oh, I don't understand why it's not doing better. And there are so many simple things you can do to make your podcast good. Firstly, there is a reason most TV shows are between 22 and 44 minutes long, because that's the human attention span. So no one's going to listen to your 90-minute podcast, your 2-hour podcast episode. Some were 2.5 hours. Comedians putting out 2.5-hour podcasts and thinking the world was interested in listening to them talk for 2.5 hours to their mates about their shopping trip that week. Okay, nobody cares. How self-indulgent are you that you think you're worth listening to for 2.5 hours talking about your dreary, boring life? Secondly, no, I'm going to say these things.
No, I'm totally. I'm just like, how much of my life have I talked about? I'm not sure yet. No, just go on.
Secondly,
go on.
the other reason that I think comedians make terrible podcasts, and again, it comes back to self-indulgence, is they think that, particularly the interview podcast where they bring a guest on, they think that they're the most important person in that podcast episode. And in fact, in every podcast episode they do, they're wrong. You are not the most important person. If you invite a guest onto your show, your guest is the most important person, and chances are people are tuning in to listen to your guest. Okay, so ask them a question, shut the fuck up, and let them talk. And I hear this all the time, comedians interrupting their guests constantly for two reasons. One, oh, the audience haven't heard me say anything for 3 minutes, I better pipe up because I'm important. And secondly, well, I'm funnier than them. And it's this one-upmanship bullshit where your guest is talking and they'll think of a gag, or they think it's a gag, and they'll interrupt their guest in mid-flow to get their gag out. It's like, really, you're trying to make it about yourself when you've got a great guest in here talking, saying something interesting, but you're still obsessed with making it all about you. Don't do that. So those things really annoy me. And the third thing that really annoys me is people putting out podcasts. Well, 4 things, actually. I'm going to come to the 4th. The third thing that annoys me is people who are not willing to put in the effort to make a good product. Okay? Because TV shows, radio shows, podcasts, videos, DVDs, whatever, it's a product you're putting out there. Okay, you won't charge people for it, but it's a product you're putting out there. And what's terrible is when people just record a podcast, stick out the raw audio and go, that's me done. Well, you do edit yours, and I know you edit yours because I edit mine quite heavily, and you can hear when a podcast has been edited well or not edited at all. And the ones that are edited at all are usually dreadful. When I do mine, my objective is to make my guests sound great and me sound great.
That's it.
Right? That's very important. So I edit out all the silences. I edit out all the lines they fluff. I will edit out all the ums and the ers and the you knows and like, so that their vocal sounds like it's flowing. Everybody on my podcast sounds fantastic. That's good for me because it's good for my listeners, and it's good for them because that's something they can share with people and go, here's me explaining my philosophy on something, and I sound great.
Exactly.
And the 4th thing, Patreon. Why? I would never dare ask for Patreon donations for my podcast. Okay, I know you do.
I do.
Loads of people do.
And I have done, the first video I released, I made a massive error, a fatal error. I think that there should be a joy roll for people who hate people who use Patreon, because there's some really terrible donation videos, right? And one is definitely my first one I released. It was awful. And I was like, what have I done? I mean, whoever was interested in the podcast or even like clicked on it was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, like, I've taken that one down and I've put up one that's a little bit more professional now.
Right.
But it's like, if you want to, why not? It was so desperate, the first one I put up. It was so, I hated it. I was like, oh my God, Winter, what are you doing to yourself? You're prostrating yourself for
what is likely to be very little money in the end.
Exactly. But
you're giving up your dignity. And the issue I have is, if I was having a chat with a comedian in the pub and somebody was overhearing our conversation, I wouldn't ask them for a donation afterwards. But that's what you're doing with podcasts, folks. Yes, I've had a chat with someone for my own sake. Please give me money. What the fuck are you doing? Why would you do that? I would never do that. I think it's undignified. And so I would never ask for Patreon donations for my podcast, ever. But I know hundreds of people do. I know you do. If it works for you, fair enough. I just think it's undignified. Have I been controversial enough?
Yeah, great. So that is Jay Islam's philosophy on podcasting, right?
Yes. And I think I can speak with some authority, given that my podcast has been on the homepage of iTunes for the last year and a bit. Just a few weeks ago, I hit 250,000 downloads in a year. So I would say I generally know what I'm doing and that I put out a reasonably good podcast. You people out there, you can ignore everything I have to say and you can do it your way, and of course you can. And if you think that, I'm absolutely wrong, fair enough. Try it your own way. Ignore everything I've said. But those are my best practices that I'm putting out there.
Wanted to comedy since you're like very young, right?
Yes.
But teenager.
Yes.
What was the thing that you went, the switch, you went, I could do this. I can definitely do this.
Do you know what? There wasn't any one point where I thought that. Because I know people always talk about, I saw so-and-so comedian and they were great. And I thought, they're from the same place I am. Or he's from the same neck of the woods that I grew up. So why can't I? I had a Geordie comedian on my podcast who said that. There was another comedian who said, I saw someone at a big gig, one of the big pro clubs, and they were dreadful. And I thought, well, if they could do it, so can I. That didn't happen for me. I just wanted to push myself to try things that I was scared of doing. Yeah. And of course, we're all scared of doing it. And that never goes away, I don't think. I don't think I've ever stopped being terrified. Even now that I'm 800 or so gigs in, it's still scary, and it should be, I think.
Do you know the exact number of gigs?
I've stopped counting at about 800.
Okay, fair play.
I just can't be bothered anymore. But I do have a spreadsheet, so I could go back and check because I have the full list of all the ones I've done, but it's about 800 something now. Yeah. I just wanted to test myself, and I think I'm just one of those people who will push myself for new experiences, for new things, and test my own limits. And this is one of the things where I was testing my own limits. I really enjoyed it and kept going. I mean, my first gig, proper gig, because I did some ages ago, one-offs, open mic-y things, was on the top of the double-decker bus in Edinburgh. They used to have a double-decker bus parked outside Three Sisters, where Laughing Horse would run shows upstairs. And I did a comedy course with Laughing Horse, because I was going out to Edinburgh. I wanted to try it. The only way I could guarantee myself a gig at the Edinburgh Fringe was to do their course, because it came with a showcase spot at the end. And so I agreed to do that. That was an interesting experience, because I'm not a big fan of comedy courses, and I'm still not a big fan of comedy courses. I think that you can learn a hell of a lot asking somebody with experience for tips, but there's nothing that matches the experience you get from raw stage time. Stage time is all you really need to get better. I mean, some people will be naturally gifted, they'll go up and they'll develop faster than others, but ultimately, you need to get on stage, you need to put in those hours, you need to tread those boards to make yourself better and stronger and sharper. And you will get rusty if you take time off. I've noticed that as well, having taken certain spells off, a couple of months here and there. But that gig was interesting because the tutor told me I was going to die on my arse. I was the only person who was told I would die on my arse. This was with Bam Bam. Hated the material, was very uncomfortable with me doing the showcase because the tutor thought, if I send you out there, people will know you've come from my course, and when you do badly, you will taint my good name. All the other course participants were told they were wonderful, they were going to have a great gig, and they were finding their comedy voice, which was bullshit, obviously, because all of us had never really done it before. And then we all went up one by one, and everyone died on their arse. And then I went up and smashed it.
Nice.
I just went really, really well. And the audience came on board. They really enjoyed it. And maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Maybe I've created a myth in my head that gig went really well. But I do remember everybody doing badly and me coming off going, yeah, that was good.
Even if you don't agree with what that person's doing, you can see some comedic value in what they're creating.
I don't think that the feedback I got from the course tutor was malicious.
Right.
I think it was well-intentioned. They genuinely believed I was going to die on my ass because what I was doing was so harsh. It was pushing the boundaries too much. I think most of us understand that be able to push the boundaries and get away with it, you either need to be exceptionally talented, exceptionally likeable, or lucky. I think I got lucky. That's what I think happened. Because if you're very experienced, you understand how to build trust with an audience very quickly, and then you can push with really harsh material. I had no experience, and so I think I just happened to get lucky with an audience that were going to go with the stuff that I was doing. Because I'm not likeable.
I saw you doing some Trump stuff the other day. What happened?
This is another comedy character I did. This is pre-election. I was doing a character called Donnie Trump. And the reason I created Donnie Trump, who is the son of Donald Trump, is that I was asked to do a Muslim comedy show, a Muslim gig. Now, I'd never done Muslim gigs. I had no interest in doing Muslim gigs. I consider myself, like I said, not very connected to the community. I consider myself very mainstream as a performer, as an entertainer, as an artist. And I had to invent something new because they were never going to go with my existing material. This pre-election, remember, thought, I will invent a new character. And the new character was called Donnie Trump. He was the son of Donald Trump. And the conceit of the set was that we were imagining that he has come to you, the audience, and you, the audience, are a group of Muslims in a concentration camp post-election because Daddy's won. And he is going to explain to you your place in the new America now that Donald Trump is in charge. And I invented that character specifically for that, not expecting them to get it, not expecting them to like it. And weirdly, they loved it. They absolutely got it. I managed to sneak in some blasphemy within there, which some people were uncomfortable with. But at that point, when I brought it out, I'd already built the trust. They understood the concept, right? That we're making fun of this idea that Donald Trump is going to win and send you all to concentration camps, which then he did win, weirdly, which I didn't expect. But and then I snuck in some references to pornography that about half the audience laughed at. Because they were subtle references, and you could tell who the perverts were by who was laughing, and a lot of confused faces. That was a frightening gig. That was a really scary gig, because this is an audience I'm used to performing to. I've done a couple more. One of them went very, very badly. One of them went very, very well. I don't know if I can work that kind of audience, that particular demographic, but I may try it again in future. But I don't think I appeal to the Muslim community at all, because I have no sacred cows. There's nothing sacred to me that is too much to make fun of. There are certain things I won't make fun of out of fear of being killed. But on the whole, I will make fun of lots of different things. I mean, I make reference to the Prophet Muhammad marrying a 6-year-old girl within one of my sets. And I did that at the Glee Club. The audience were very uncomfortable with it. And I knew straight away, hold on, you've probably pushed too far. But what was weird was when I was leaving the venue, one of the bouncers came up to me and had a go at me. He was a Muslim. And he said, I'm not happy with what you did on stage. I think it's very bad that you're showing these people that side of our community. I was like, but you know what? I didn't invent it. I didn't make this up. This is already in the holy texts. Can't have a go at me. I didn't set out to invent a lie. I just presented information that's already there and part of the faith. And that's why I don't think the community will really fate me as a hero, as they do many Muslim comedians. There are many Muslim comedians who are wonderful at working that audience, and they're very popular within that audience. I don't expect to ever be popular within that audience.
I remember you did a set for Spiky Mike talking about that gig that you... I think it was a different gig.
Yes.
So you died on your arse at this gig.
Yes.
Because it was at the point to that. Because he said that it's really well paid.
Muslim comedy shows are all really well paid.
Yeah.
There's a Christian circuit as well, that's really well paid, and there are comedians who just work at these particular circuits. There are comedians who only do Muslim comedy gigs. They make a huge amount of money out of it. They have a fantastic following. Fair play to them, right? Good for them. They found a niche. They're working it hard. It's show business. Go and work the business. But yeah, I did a very big Muslim comedy gig. Totally misunderstood, misjudged that audience. They did not like me, and I was asked not to do, because you were booked for a run, and I was asked not to do any more. But they let me keep the money, so thank you.
But you didn't go, you went as yourself, didn't you?
Yes. I didn't do the characters, and people have said to me afterwards, you may have got away with a lot more if you did the characters.
Oh, yeah?
Because when you do characters, they're already ludicrous. Yeah. So when you say anything, people understand this is going to be a joke, right? Whereas I think you just misjudge sometimes, occasionally. I did another one after that, another Muslim-heavy gig. They're rarely billed as Muslim-only, because you can't do that. Anyone can buy a ticket, but it was all right. I went up and I just made fun of my family and the kind of transphobia, really, actually. And they understood. They understood what I was doing, in that we are a transphobic community. And, we will make fun of people who are transgender, but at the same time, I kept it simple. Yeah. I kept it really simple, and they were all right with it.
Your family come to see you perform?
Never, not once.
Do they know? They know, obviously. They're
aware.
Right? They know, they're aware. And I mean, because the community is pretty tight, right? They go, right, they've seen you at this gig. It's like, it's better than the internet, right? It goes straight back.
Yes, right. Yes. Everybody does know in the community generally what I do. Some of them have seen me blonde and probably ask questions about why is he blonde now. But on the whole,
And if it's like as I say, it's that transphobic and like homophobic, they're like, oh, he's blind. Well, he must be gay.
he must be gay. Yes. No, I don't think they think so. They're aware. I'm pretty sure the community generally that I do comedy. I've never had any family ever come to see me. I have occasionally had once or twice work colleagues have come to see me. Enjoyed it, so it's all right. Again, it's a very, very limited number. I keep my personal and professional life very separate from my comedy world. I don't really want those two worlds to collide.
That's fair. So you're a journalist. You said you did training in journalism. Where did you do that?
I trained at the BBC.
Right.
A long time ago. We're going back a decade and a bit. It was really good. I think I was one of the last tranche of people that did this particular training with the BBC. They trained you in broadcast journalism and journalism generally. So what they did was you do a lot of classroom stuff and then they'd farm you out to different things. So go and work on a particular radio thing or go and work on even a local newspaper. Not TV at that point, although I did work in TV journalism later on behind the scenes. But it was a really good training for teaching you how to communicate. However, I think better training came when I was working in banking and they taught you how to be a salesman. That is the most useful training I think I've ever done. It's exceptionally useful in terms of comedy because it teaches you how to be succinct, how to get to the point quickly, but also how to be likeable. I think being likeable is really important if you're doing comedy. It's so important. In terms of journalism, it's the marketing skills and the contacts that it gave me that have been most useful.
Do any more work for the BBC, freelance work, journalism work, or?
Not at the moment, and I'm considering whether to go back into broadcasting, but I think it's one of those where, a lot of journalists become PR people afterwards, and that's because it pays so much better. Journalism as an industry, as a craft, is dying, not just in this country, worldwide. We have a real problem with budgets being slashed left, right and centre. Local journalism, community journalism is on its knees right now. Things are very bad out there. And so trying to build a career in journalism starting now is a waste of time, really, because if you think about it, blogs have taken over, news spreads on Twitter now. It's the nationals that have consolidated their grip on all the locals and downsized all the local hubs. So, for example, in Birmingham, where I'm often, Birmingham Mail has hardly any staff left. They're part of the Mirror Group, and so what will happen is, if a big story breaks locally, as often does, let's say at 9 o'clock in the evening, they don't have anyone to cover it. And it's awful. You'll go on their website, or even BBC Birmingham. You'll go on their website going, oh, something's happening, I've saw it on Twitter. It's happening down the street, let's find out what's going on. BBC Birmingham won't cover it, Birmingham Mail won't be covering it. One of the nationals might be. Really, the reason they're not covering it is they don't have any staff to go and cover it at that point. They don't have the budget, they don't have the money that they used to. And a big part of that is newspaper circulations are through the floor right now. Nobody reads proper newspapers anymore. Everything's online. Advertising for online is much less. They can't afford to have a reasonable staff.
So do you do any other writing apart from your comedy? Do you do sketches as well? And
I don't. I do try and write articles every now and then when something inspires me. But I do pitch articles to newspapers all the time. But again, the big issue is getting paid. I'm not particularly keen on throwing stuff out there for free. Yes, it's good in one way because it gets your name out there and you get a byline and all that kind of stuff. But I've done enough of that. I'd rather not be giving it away for free. Occasionally, I'll write something, I'll shop it around to all the major news sources. If they all turn it down, then I'll stick it on Huffington Post and just do it that way. Because Huffington Post won't pay you, but it's really good for Google rank. It's really good for linking back to your own stuff. And it helps your online presence, your online footprint. Again, writing, now that everyone's a blogger and everyone's micro-blogging on Twitter and Facebook, it's a dying art. I mean, photojournalism as a skill, as a job, has disappeared since technology came along and everybody has a phone with a camera on it. Photojournalism doesn't exist anymore in the way that it used to. I think journalism is going that way as well, which is really sad. It's a real shame because who's going to hold our society and particularly our politicians to account? It's not going to be the billionaires who own the nationals.
So you think, right, just batten down the hatches and just plough your way through what path you're trying to get to in comedy, right?
Well, comedy, but also I'm going to keep my hand in as far as the corporate world is concerned because I have skills that are valuable, that are desirable to the corporate world, and so I'm going to be offering those constantly to whoever I can. I would love to do something in the arts, maybe work for an arts company, an arts centre, for example, but those kind of jobs don't appear very often, and they don't pay particularly well either. I'll just keep plugging away the way I have been for the last few years, keeping both things running simultaneously.
Are you doing other festivals?
No, I am taking a bit of a break at the moment. from doing comedy. I think I've reached a certain point where I need one.
Sure.
I think I've done a huge amount of gigs in a small amount of time, and they've been really fun, and I've really enjoyed it, but it's time to step back a little, enjoy the summer, which I haven't managed to do properly for a few years, and then come back to comedy later in the year. So maybe I'll take 3-4 months off. And of course you get a little rusty, and you need to go back to those open mics and the new material nights to get back into the rhythm of things and get your technique sharp again. But a few months off won't harm you.
Right. So tell me, what's your worst gig you've ever done?
So many, man. I've been some bad ones. Absolute worst probably was, I think there was a Women's Institute event that I was asked to do last minute because somebody had dropped out and I was in the area, and I was told, can you go and do 10 minutes at this Women's Institute thing? It's in a church, huge church. I arrived, and the headliner was going to do 1 hour, and she wasn't really a comedian. She was like an actor who had written a thing about her travel somewhere, blah, blah. She was going to do an hour and just needed someone to warm up the crowd a little. So I arrive, and it's a lovely group of very polite middle-class ladies in a very lovely part of Birmingham. But first thing I notice is there's no stage at all. Everything's on the same level. They're all sitting on round tables. The front of the room to the first table is about 10 metres. And they ask me, oh, do you need a sound check? Yeah, why not? Let's have a look at your equipment. And their equipment is a karaoke speaker. Now, mind you, this is a huge, huge, huge room. It's a karaoke speaker with a cheap Argos microphone that they've clearly got just that day, and a lead that is, I think, 1.5 meters long. So I'm tethered to this karaoke speaker, an audience at least 10 metres away from me, who can't really hear me either. And I start performing. They sit quietly and tolerate me, and after 5 minutes I give up the ghost and I go, thank you very much, goodbye, and then run away backstage ashamed of how badly this has gone. Fair play to them. As I was leaving and trying to sneak out, they grabbed me and went, oh, no, you must sit with us and have some drinks and we'll bring you some food. We've got samosas and all kinds of lovely things that we've made for this event. Come. I was like, no, thank you. No. I really have to be elsewhere.
Oh, no.
And I ran away.
No.
That was probably the worst. I mean, there've been some weird ones where people have shouted out. There was a competition final I did. Nando's Comedian of the Year. I was in the final of that, yeah.
Nice.
It was up in the northwest somewhere.
Yeah.
I did the heat, smashed the heat, won the heat comfortably, absolutely obliterated it. So obviously I'm in the final with lots of really good acts. So I had no expectation of winning anyway. But they were really lovely. They liked most of the acts. And then I came on. They really didn't go with it for some reason. Absolutely hated it. And then one woman at the back, because it was dark room, very dark. It was in Nando's. It was in a Nando's. And they lit it really well, so only the stage was lit. And then one woman at the back started shouting, he's shit, get him off. Can someone please get him off the stage? And of course, you have 5 minutes. You can't really deal with hecklers, and also you can't see where this heckle is coming from. So that was particularly painful, because at that point, and I was very new at that point, all I could do was freeze and go, can you repeat that? And of course, she repeated more abuse. So that move didn't work very well. I've had a couple of those, not as many as you'd imagine. I've only been racially abused at one gig, and that was a gig in London where a very, very, very drunk woman shouted at me, that might be funny where you come from, but it's not funny here.
Wow.
Yeah. She was exceptionally drunk, and then as soon as I came off stage, every one of her friends came up to me, hugely apologetic, saying, we're really, really sorry that happened to you. That shouldn't have happened to you. That was bang out of order. She's just very drunk, which of course is never an excuse, because when you're very drunk, you're more yourself than not yourself.
The truth
yeah, the truth comes out. But weirdly, as I arrived back in the green room, the promoter handed me my money and said, well, Jay, some people just aren't good enough, are they? He blamed me for her being abusive to me and me not being able to handle it very well. But of course, how do I handle that well? I don't know this person who's sitting in the front row shouting abuse at me. Sure. So I've never played his gigs ever again. But weirdly, what must have happened, so I come off, he has a go at me for doing badly. As I am heading back home, because I was on the train back home, he sends me a message saying, well done, Jay. I will have you back any time you want. Now, what's obviously happened is his audience have come up to him and said, we really enjoyed that guy, real shame, that bitch was so evil. But I'm not going back to his gig, ever. Right. Not a chance.
I mean, you should be used to this racism by now, Jay. That's what I'm saying, isn't it? I mean, you know, you just didn't do very well with the racism. Come on, just you take it like you usually do. What the hell?
But to be fair, only once have I ever had that.
Yeah. Once out of 800 gigs is not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. And I think it confirms my theory that we as a nation, as a society, are generally good people. That is very, very rare. I know some people will have a different experience and may have had it more often, but I don't really come across it.
Right, all right. I've burnt a couple of bridges, I'm sure, in comedy, right? And there's only a couple I'm very aware of, right? You're not in the headspace, right? And you can't get off the track of you're going to fucking destroy the relationship with this person right now. And you're just there with a torch, burning that fucking bridge with the petrol. And you're going, no, well, it's too late now. I'm just going to keep pouring petrol on this fucking bridge. Sorry, man. This is where it's going. Has there been any moment for you in comedy when you've gone, I am destroying this moment with this promoter? Has there been a moment like that?
There's only a very small handful of promoters that I've had any issue with. Vast majority of promoters, fantastic. They treat you very well. They're respectful of your craft. They're respectful of their comedians. They treat their comedians very, very well. There is a very tiny, tiny minority who are, and there's no better word for it, cunts. They are vile people who treat comedians badly, okay, and treat their audiences badly. It's always the two. If they treat their comedians badly, they will be treating their audiences badly as well. There are occasionally promoters who tell you don't do X, Y, Z, and then in the heat of the moment you forget and you do, okay, and they don't want you back at their club. And I understand that. You told me at the start not to do it. I was unprofessional in that I forgot and I did it. But very, very tiny minority who are thoroughly unpleasant, and I would never, ever want to work with.
Is there a story to one particular moment?
I don't really have any issues with anybody, if I'm absolutely honest. I mean, most people, vast majority of people, it's cool. You're doing your thing. You're working in your little corner of the world, of the industry, and they're getting on with it, and that's fine. I do sometimes get frustrated by not being booked. Right. But only in one specific circumstance. And that circumstance is when I perform at a show, it goes exceptionally well, a promoter who runs a different show comes up to me and says, that was great, I would love to have you on my show, get in touch. And then you do, and you hear nothing back, ever. And you know, and of course you don't want to be pushy, so you might every 3, 4, 5, 6 months send them a message saying, still would love to get on your show. And that's frustrating because I didn't go to you to ask for a gig. You came to me offering one, and now you won't give me one. That's weird. So you set up my expectations and then dashed them dramatically. Well, not dramatically, but through ignoring me. Right. And that's the only thing that I think I find a little frustrating with most promoters. But on the whole, they have a comedy club to run, and their world is bigger than the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes that I will do at their comedy club. They have other concerns, and I appreciate that.
The biggest irk of the comedy industry for you?
This is the thing. I don't generally worry about what other people are doing. I worry about what I'm doing and what I'm getting on with. And I don't know. I'm not easily frustrated. I know I express myself, particularly when I write, as a man full of frustrations. But that's because I was taught as a journalist to write in a compelling way. Write in a compelling way, write in a way that will grab people's attention. Okay, so the person I am when I'm writing is going to either pick a point of view and then hammer away at it, or play devil's advocate. Okay, and people think, oh, he's so frustrated, he's so angry. Look at the way he writes, or particularly on social media. But that's not who I am. I'm a really relaxed person. I'm really chilled out, but I also understand how to grab an audience's attention, particularly when you're writing. And so I misrepresent myself in some ways. But at the same time, I'm not ashamed of the way I do it, because if I didn't write that way, you people wouldn't read it.
It's like you're driving a car. It's like the internet is your car. It's like when I get in my car, I drive how the fuck I want to drive, okay? But when I get out of the car, I'm the nicest person I can possibly be.
Yes! This is the perfect analogy. Although I drive like an old lady anyway, in real life. But There are certain people, certain journalists. I think Clarkson's a good example. I don't think he's the awful, evil man he pretends to be. Mm-hmm. He's writing to a deadline for a national newspaper in a syndicated column. He's going to be provocative. When he goes home, he's not that person, I don't believe. And I think that it's hard for people to appreciate that. I mean, again, with Katie Hopkins, from what I hear, she could die very soon. She has horrible health problems. And I suspect that she just wants to make as much money for her kids as possible, as quickly as possible. And she's chosen this as a way to do it. She's going to be the provocateur online. She's going to write horrendous things about immigrants for the Daily Mail and get paid well for it and then leave that for her kids. And, you know, if she can live with herself morally, I don't know how you could. Because I've been asked if I'll write for the Daily Mail, and that's my red line. I'm not going there. But she seems to be able to do it. She's made that decision. Fair enough. But I don't believe she's as horrendous in real life as she claims to be or pretends to be online. To sum up, I'm a very relaxed person. Not much phases me because I don't sit around judging other people. I think that's such a waste of time. Honestly. And I also don't worry about what other people are thinking or saying or doing or even saying about me. Just don't care. Cannot bring myself to care. The world is such a big place. Why would I worry about minutiae like that?
That's great. It's good. It's the best mentality to have, man. Just keep your head down, keep doing the work, and then hopefully just getting better at what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, of course. And if I didn't, I'd probably kill myself.
Finish on a high note and a low note, then. That's great. But so your next mission into 2017-18 is having some time off.
Yes.
You're going to work on your show, which is...
Islamophobic Muslim.
Islamophobic Muslim, right, great. And that is going to be at the Fringe in 2018.
Yes, and I'm hoping that the Comedy Canon podcast will hit at least 100 episodes. 500,000 downloads would be nice. I think it's got a reasonable subscriber number that it can probably hit that 500,000 that I really want to. And from there, who knows where I'll go. I would love to do something more in radio. I mean, I already do two radio shows. I would love to do something with one of the nationals. That would be lovely. But at the same time, I think we all have those similar dreams of, you know, writing a sitcom, write a sketch show, write a great Edinburgh show, and be successful from there onwards. But what I certainly don't want to do is be a circuit comedian, because that, from afar anyway, looks like a horrendous, unfulfilling life. And of course, what I keep hearing from a lot of the professionals, particularly the ones that I interview on my podcast, is the circuit is dying, comedy as a live medium is really struggling. It could collapse and not come back again for maybe 10 years. So things aren't healthy out in comedy land at the moment. And all the professionals I speak to make the same complaint. That life was really good for them 10 years ago. It's not going to be good for them for the next 10 years. And so I think if you want to be an artist working in the field of comedy, then you have to start looking at the digital channels in terms of putting stuff out there on YouTube. YouTube is the big one, of course, but putting out some podcasts, create some scripted comedy and, you know, some short sketches and start putting them out there. And I'm tempted to go down that route, but I haven't decided yet.
Well, cheers, Islam. Thank you for coming on the show, man. And
It's
thank you for
my
letting me use
pleasure.
this amazing office, man. It's been great.
Well, yeah, it's a great studio. Hopefully the sound will be spot on. I did boast that it would be, but I don't know.
Well, it's been great, man. I really enjoyed it.
We'll
Thanks,
soon find out. Also, another bugbear of mine on podcasts, the volume is never high enough. I'm hard of hearing, partially, so that's a complaint that I have with most podcasts. So if you could just turn the volume, tweak it to 11 on this one, that would be much appreciated.
No worries, man. Will do. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
And that was episode 46 with a very funny, very controversial, lovely fella too, Mr. Jay Islam. Thank you, Jay, for letting us use your studios. The sound is lovely. Jay is taking a show up to the Edinburgh Fringe in 2018 called Islamophobic Muslim. So go find him on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go see him live because he's going to be working some stuff out for that. He's also got his own successful podcast called The Comedy Canon. It's on iTunes. Go find it there. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at The Comedy Defect. You can also follow me at Winter Phone Under. Come see my live stand-up gig dates. And for my previews for my upcoming show called Tolerance, which will be on my website, which is winterphoneander.com. I don't want to talk for too much longer now because I've got to go to a gig. So that was Jay Islam for episode 46. Next week for episode 47, we've got the very funny, very likeable, very hardworking Robin Perkins. And that's for episode 47. So guys, we will see you next week.